First year of Bruff. Let's give it up for Bruff. Woo! Yeah. All right. You'll be able to say you were there. All right. You're that crowd. So just some quick intros. I'm Sam Claitor. I have 79 different film and television show credits to my name. I've helped finance a range of films. Done all sorts of different forms of it. Done the equity raise. Done the beg from your family and friends thing, banks, grants, done tax incentive programs in 3 different countries and a range of states, done the foreign pre-sale thing, MGs, just throwing out some of this because we'll be talking about a couple different variations of it. And I've talked to all these guys multiple times before, so we're going to try to have a conversation and make it feel like you're able to sit in on an intimate conversation. So I'll talk about Sanjay, just to hit the bio real quick. Sanjay is the founder and CEO of Marginal MediaWorks, an indie film, TV, animation, audio studio focused on the intersection of commercial genres and distinct cultural voices. The company has developed or made films for Amazon, Hulu, IFC, HBO Max, a ton of places. Its most recent film, Cypher, won the jury prize at Tribeca, and its current film, She Taught Love, was named Indie Film of the Year by the African American Film Critics Association. He doesn't have it in his bio, but I'm going to throw it out. He's a Baton Rouge native. Sanjay is a co-founder and board member of Gold House and also the board chair of CAPE. He is also a co-founder and board member of the Future Film Coalition. Behind his leadership in the API and indie film community, Sanjay has led groundbreaking work at the intersection of tech, media, and culture, from building Machinima, a pioneer in the digital entertainment and video gaming that launched the creator economy and was acquired by Warner Brothers, and co-founding All Def Media with backing from top investors like Graycroft, A16Z, Universal Music Group. He began his career at Warner Bros. Pictures. We got Steven all the way over here. Yeah. After attending film school at Chapman, Steven began his career in entertainment, working on Entourage and the Entourage movie, and HBO Ballers. After several years working as a screenwriter, selling projects to Black Pills and Full Screen and others, through his reps at ICM Partners, Steven pivoted to producing and co-founding Static Films in 2021, independently producing 5 features and several shorts in their first 2 years alone with budgets under $1 million, and largely first-time feature directors. I imagine a lot of people here are interested in that. His physical production experience led him to take a position as an executive producer at Buffalo 8 and Bonded Media Capital in 2023, managing their slate of independent projects to provide guidance and support on finance, physical production, and sales to independent filmmakers. Recently, Bond in Buffalo 8 did the Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, Woman of the Hour, and a #1 Netflix title, co-financing the $2 million indie film Terrifier 3, which went on to gross $88 million globally and premiered at TIFF 24. Had a Sam Raimi produced feature titled Locked, starring Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins, which is currently on Hulu's Top 10. Steven's most recent film as an executive producer, Dog Years, starring Leah Lewis, completed principal photography in April 2025 and is set for release in spring of 2026.
It also stars Xolo Maridueña. I know it's
Thank
tough
you.
one to pronounce.
All right. So next we got Tony, sitting right here next to me. Tony Armour is head of physical production at Talent Entertainment. And a veteran film executive producer. He served as Dallas Film Commissioner from 23 to 24, securing investment for a soundstage expansion and launching workforce and marketing initiatives, and as St. Petersburg/Clearwater Film Commissioner from 2014 to 2023. Driving record growth that earned Movie Maker's top 25 best places to live and work as a movie maker, 2021 to 23, despite no state incentives. That's huge. Tony co-founded Film USA, the National Association of U.S. Film Commissions, working with industry partners like MPAA on a federal policy. Shout out to Katie over there, co-founder. sorry, skipping around a little bit, co-founded the Sunscreen Film Festival, which celebrated its 20th year in 2025. His producing and writing credits include Lionsgate distributed features and the Amazon series Life's Reward. He created the Terminal Kill graphic novel in 24 and has produced and directed award-winning documentaries. All right. Bear with me, last one. All right. I know, we should have skipped the bios, but yeah. Patrick, we got Patrick. Yes, thank you everybody for coming. We got Patrick Mulhearn, is a producer and owner of Mulhearn & Associates, a motion picture development, finance, production, and industry growth consulting firm based at Celtic Studios in Baton Rouge. Yay! He is also co-owner and CEO of the motion picture tax credit consulting company Irrevocable Designee LLC. Patrick is the founder of the Louisiana Academy of Production, a crew training charter school scheduled to open in 26, and founded the Louisiana Film and Entertainment Association, which is now Film Louisiana. He founded that in 2010. Previously, Mulhearn served as the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at Louisiana Economic Development, LED, and as Executive Director of Celtic Studios from 2009 all the way until 2017. He was also the Assistant Director of Film and Television for the state of Louisiana, having originally joined LED in 2006. Prior to working in state government, he served as a marketing producer at both WBRZ TV in Baton Rouge and WWL TV in New Orleans. Patrick is a 2015 inductee into the LSU Alumni Association's Hall of Distinction and was named to the Baton Rouge Business Report's Capital Region 500 list for the past 3 years. A native of Natchez, Mississippi, he has one wife, 2 sons, and 3 dogs, and 1 cat, and resides with all of them in Bruley.
That's important.
Yeah, it is very important. Got it. All right, got all the bios out of the way. So we had a couple different ways we could kick this off, but I think the best way is to hit Tony with the prompt of tell me about the Bernie the Dolphin story.
Yeah, because we were trying to talk about, well, how do you get started kind of talking about film finance and everything else, and obviously we'll take questions from the audience, and I imagine a lot of people are kind of just getting started, and you know, if we start throwing out terms like MG, and you start throwing out all the initials and be like, wait, what's MG? It's a minimum guarantee, but what's a minimum guarantee and all that? And so maybe this story will help a little bit. It's a little bit of a traditional way of getting a film made, but at the same time kind of untraditional. So I was at the Cannes Film Festival in 2017. I have a friend who's a producer and a sales agent, and he had just sold a film to Lionsgate called Army Dog. And so it was, you know, one of these smaller budget, family-friendly kids and a dog kind of a thing. And there's a division of Lionsgate called Grindstone. So Grindstone will pick up these films and then they'll put them out through Lionsgate. And after Marty sold the film to them, they were like, "This is great. You know, what else do you have? We're looking for a family-friendly marine mammal, kids in a marine mammal movie." And he's like,
They phrased it exactly that way?
Yeah, marine mammal. We want family-friendly kids in a marine mammal movie. And it's just a little bit way to illustrate of what does the marketplace want. Like, there's films that we want to make, there's films that you want to make, but what does the marketplace want at this point in time? The marketplace apparently wanted a kid-friendly marine mammal movie. So Marty's like, I don't have anything, but I got a guy. And I was St. Pete Clearwater Film Commissioner at the time, which, if you don't know, is a Gulf Coast of Florida, beautiful beaches, and dolphins, and et cetera, in the area. So Marty calls me up, comes over to my pavilion, we sit down, and we come up with a treatment on my phone about a sunburned dolphin that's rescued by a kid who has a burgeoning YouTube channel. And so he goes back and he pitches this the next day to Grindstone, and they're like, great, get us a script. And so then we come up with a more detailed treatment, and there's a teacher that we know in Florida who also happens to be a writer. She's off for the summer, and I say, hey, Terry, will you write a script for us? We're going to give you a detailed outline. I want you to send us every 10 pages to make sure it's on pace for what we want. We're not going to pay you for it unless the movie gets made. If the movie gets made, then we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. And she said, okay. So we started this process. In a month, had our first draft of the script. Marty takes it, does a second pass on it. So within 2 months, so this was May when we had the meeting. This would be July, we've got the script, Marty takes it to Grindstone, they're like, great, here's a minimum guarantee, go make the movie. And what a minimum guarantee means is, here's X amount of dollars that we're gonna give you to go make this film, or what we're actually gonna pay you once the film is done and you deliver
I
it.
feel like that's the more common story, is they say minimum guarantee, and everybody's hoping they're going to get all their money up front,
Right.
and rarely does it happen.
Yeah,
that
so,
way.
so
That's
you're,
what
they're not
bonding's
actually
for.
giving us a check. They're just giving us an IOU that says, we'll pay you later if you make this movie. And this is for domestic distribution in North America and the US. So Marty has another friend who has a bigger sales company, happens to be talking to her, and she says, what are you working on? He's like, oh, I just got this MG to make this, Dolphin film in Florida with Tony for domestic. And she's like, oh, what's it about? Well, just so happens she has a 10-year-old daughter who wants to be an actress, and just so happens that we'd written into the script a younger sister for the guy that's starting a YouTube channel. And so then she gives us a MG for worldwide. And so I'll give you the numbers because it's been a while and not that big a deal. So Grindstone said, we're going to give you $250,000. And then this other company said, we'll give you $500,000 for the whole world to make this movie. So a couple of years prior, I was in Cannes. You're going to see a theme running through here. And I was at dinner, and I met these guys from New Orleans who happened to finance tax credits because they're from New Orleans. They had other businesses. And I stayed in touch with them. And I basically called them up and said, hey, I've got a minimum guarantee for a film for $500,000. We're going to make it for $400,000. Why don't you give me $200,000? And so they're like, okay, that sounds like a good deal. So they gave me $200,000. I called up another friend of mine who was just starting to get into film and said the same thing and said, why don't you give me $200,000 because we're going to make the movie for $400,000, but we're going to get paid $500,000, so you're going to get your money back plus your 20% on top. He's like, that sounds like a good deal. So we got $400,000. We had cameras rolling 7 months after the initial meeting in Cannes, had all the money in place, made the movie, and then in the process of while we were editing it, Grindstone liked it so much they asked us for a sequel. And so we just basically did the whole thing over again. And then as the first film was coming out in December of 2018, we did a premiere for that film because we had all the cast in town because we were shooting the second one at the same time.
How convenient.
Yeah, how convenient. And so it's a very uncommon kind of thing, but it's a way that it wouldn't happen if I wasn't in Cannes. It wouldn't happen if I hadn't had Marty at my film festival years early and became friends with him. Wouldn't happen if I hadn't been in Cannes and met the guys from New Orleans and then stayed in touch with them and became friends with them. You have all these little pieces that you put into place just to kind of circle around to eventually, years down the road, kind of put it all together and then make two.
And that's how you have an overnight success, right?
Right, yeah. And then that's, 20 years of relationships building up to something where you kind of put all that together, basically.
I would also add, it's rare that you got an MG based on like something conceptual, like a marine mammal.
It's because they wanted that. They asked for it.
I totally get it. And to kind of drill into the MG conversation, since I think that's what we're here for, our company, Bondit, parent company of Buffalo 8, we are basically a bank for transactions just like that. So you could have, in that scenario, he can call us and we have a credit facility and we do these kinds of loans against minimum guarantees, distribution guarantees, international pre-sales, and tax credits. And we can bundle them. So that's how, like, if you see a movie, commonly movies are put together that have big movie stars, like we'll use the Anna Kendrick movie that we did, Woman of the Hour, as an example. That's roughly an $8 million movie, and about $4 million of that is, private equity that the production company puts in, and then another $4 million is a mixture of pre-sales where you're selling the rights, as we were just talking about, to different territories worldwide or domestic, and you go territory by territory and say, how much will you give me for this Anna Kendrick movie about a serial killer? And just collect all those deals and add that up to another, say, $2 million, and then you've got your tax credit worth another $2 million. And so those are what's like what our company will lend against, because it is a guarantee. But the thing that I wanted to mention is, like, those are very, very hard to come by. They are usually tied to having an extremely famous actor involved in your project.
Well, there's a caveat to that. It was
Yeah.
more than just that. Then Grindstone was also, there had to be a name actor that went along with it. And
Who'd you get?
we threw a lot of names out there, and they only had one response: get Kevin Sorbo. That's who they wanted. This was 2017, and they said, get Kevin Sorbo. So, like, all right, I guess we're going to go find Kevin Sorbo, see if he'll do a Dolphin movie. Yeah. And he did two of them.
Amazing.
That's great. Well, and I do think that this is actually kind of a common story for a lot of working producers these days where like either they got started in that or they've been doing that for a while. But that all kick-started with you had a first one, or was it your friend that had the first one with Grindstone that?
Yeah, he had already sold one to Grindstone, and they asked him for
Right.
another film.
Right. So you get one completed, and then you go back to the well, right? So that we did a similar thing with Sci-Fi and Lifetime and Hallmark, but like this applies to a bunch of different studios, and like even at the bigger studio level, you see this happen where it's almost like a permalancer type thing, where you'll see that these producers work with the same studio over and over again, and even though they're not necessarily an employee of the studio, it's because they did one good one, and then they're able to parlay it into the next one, and then at a certain point you stick with them, or sometimes you can parlay that into another studio. But yeah, so Sanjay, do you have a story you want to tell us about how you've financed some of your films?
I can't compete with the Bernie the Dolphin story.
We're done.
I mean, that is actually for the conversation, and this is getting harder and harder, not easier and easier, because this is one of the few industries where the cost of making the product gets higher and higher instead of lower and lower. By all accounts, should be getting cheaper and cheaper, and in an abstract world, it is cheaper than ever to make a film, right? But the cobbling together, I met a guy here, there's a friend who used to go to film school here, she knows somebody, is kind of the ooze of indie filmmaking, right? And so we always look at that from a different side of the equation, which is like the value and the cost. Like, very few people look at a finished film and say, how much did you make it for? I want to give you more than that, right? So everybody's made whole.
They're always like, you did great, make it cheaper next time.
No one cares how much the movie cost at the end of the day, right? And so if you're attentive to that as a filmmaker, especially an early stage filmmaker, and attentive to like what the market actually looks like and what financiers want, right? Some financiers, if you're, I mean, the best way to do it is like marry well. Like that's the best way to do it. If I can do it all over again. I unfortunately married for love. But like if you're in like the working market, right? There are some financiers who want to do it for different reasons, right? They want the experience of being involved in film or the arts. They have a kid who is trying to be an actor. Like, cool, that's fantastic, right? And those are some of the best backers of some of the best indie movies out there, right? The ones that are financial investors, right? That are purely like, I invest this and I expect that back. You need to be able to speak that language with them, right? And so that is looking at like the cost of the film, looking at what assets you put around the film, how you package it with different elements, right? What actors command what in a marketplace. And it's kind of a creative exercise. It is a creative exercise, but it's really a business exercise, right? And the more indie filmmakers understand the business they're in, the more successful indie filmmakers will be, right? So, we've cobbled together, we've done probably 10, 12 movies now. Some of them are cobbled together with like a dentist who puts in 10K, some of them are in that model. Some of them are one investor who says, love the project, love the team, here's a few $1 million, right? That's not that common. We're based in LA, and so it's a little more common there. And then some of them are pre-sold, right? Which is something indie filmmakers sometimes don't think of or don't have the access to. And that is like you take a movie to a end distributor directly, right? A Netflix, Amazon, Hulu. You pitch them the movie, they say yes, and then they write you the check and you make the movie, right?
That's the rarest of things to get to happen.
Yeah,
at the same time,
for like the indie film world.
Yeah.
Right, but I feel like that's such a glorified version of it, though, where like it's rare, but it's like what a lot of people strive for. Where that's tough to fight against. Where me and Steven were talking about this last night of like people think that if you can put together 20-30% of the equity, then all of a sudden just like money falls out of the sky, and it does not. Sorry, spoiler alert on that. The business side really ramps up at that point.
I mean, pre-selling your movie, it is, of course, like the most secure way to raise that money and spend it, because you already know that you're making it back. On the other hand, pre-selling your movie can limit your upside.
Exactly.
And these distributors who are pre-buying films are doing it at the best price possible for them, 2 years out, right? And so you see these movies. Not every movie fits a pre-sale model. Like they're very much driven by the face on the poster, like we're talking about, the concept, and if you can get Sylvester Stallone with a gun on a motorcycle, and that's
And
a
a flag.
pre-sellable movie. But the movies that I think we come to film festivals for and that come out of Sundance and we get excited about are not pre-sold movies. And so it's kind of like a very separate ecosystem in terms of the artists that are working in each one, in my opinion. And every once in a while they overlap and you get a great, we financed a movie that was an MG called Bob Trevino Likes It. And it was this really heartfelt, independent drama with Barbie Ferreira and John Leguizamo, father-daughter story. Beautiful, beautiful film. And it, for some reason, was pre-sold. And I look at the market now, and that was only 3 years ago. That movie doesn't get pre-sold today. The market's changed so much in such a short amount of time, and I can't think of a single distributor now who would look at that cast and that genre and say, this is worth $4 million to us, 2 years from now, even though that is what happened.
It's an awesome movie. I saw it in the festival. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that's constantly changing. Like one of my favorite books, good read for everybody, is Roger Corman's book about how he got started, and about what I think the title is like how I made 100 movies in Hollywood and never lost a dime. Completely different model than what most people can do today, because drive-in theaters were a key part of it. But the themes of that book still apply, of making it a smart business choice for everybody who's getting involved on the business side, while at the same time giving a lot of artists their start and a consistent way to work and make a living and do all sorts of other things. So I'm looking at things now and going, okay, well, content creation, the creator economy is a huge part of the industry now. And I look at a bunch of studios are using it as ways to validate projects, where I think that the pre-selling and the MG thing is kind of part of that too, where it's that validates your idea to a certain degree. So if you're getting feedback from a studio or a network, don't just take it as rejection and go cry in a corner or anything like that. You should take the feedback that you're that you're receiving, and really think about that. And it might be one of those things, I think it was mentioned in the Roger Corman book too, was that maybe it was Scorsese, somebody famous was saying I make 2 for them, I make 1 for me. I make 2 for them, I make 1 for me. So just, you got to think about that. It might not be the same financial model for every project you're doing. But then I guess sometimes you got to worry about being pigeonholed as one type of filmmaker.
Good problems to have.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Somebody else read the book. And this is, if anybody has questions while we're doing this stuff, feel free to throw a hand up and try to get your question. Oh, look at that.
Well, you usually have a sales agent who's going to handle that. I mean, you can go out and sell your film yourself, but now you're going to be traveling to American Film Market in Cannes and Berlin and going to all these different markets, because you have to have, it's really relationship driven, like most things in the industry. And so usually the sales companies, sales agents have relationships with the different buyers, and so they kind of know what they're looking for. But for people that don't know, there's something like, 50 international territories, and usually every country is its own territory. So you're going to individually license your film for X number of years to Germany, UK, France, Australia, whatever it might be, and you're getting a little bit from each. It's all right, we're going to get $10,000 from this country. We're going to get $50,000 from this country. We're going to get $10,000 from this country, and that's how your movie actually makes money. Is you're bit by bit by bit, selling all these little individual territories to cobble together the funds to get your money back. While you're doing that, your sales agent is taking 15 or 20% off the top, because they need to get paid for the work that they're doing to actually sell your movie. And then they have a marketing fee that they'll charge, because they have to travel to these different festivals, and then they have to put the marketing materials together and the trailers. And so there are all these things that go into it that by the time the money comes back to the filmmaker, there's not a lot left generally, but you're cobbling together piece by piece by piece all these different territories.
That off the top, part is key to that.
Well, because, so if somebody says, you pay me $20,000 and I'll go sell your movie, you don't want that. You want the sales agent who will take your movie on, and they're working basically on 100% commission. So they deserve to get paid because they're not getting paid anything until they sell the film. So, you know, they need to make a living as well. And that's where that ecosystem, you know, kind of breaks down. But it's also why, and we can talk about this a little more, now, you know, the term self-distribution, and I heard somebody else say this, but it shouldn't be called self-distribution anymore. It's still distribution. There are other ways of distributing the film as the filmmaker as opposed to going through the traditional sales agent route because so much money does come off the top.
Yeah, I think that like you know, we're talking about pre-sales and MGs and it's almost what we're exactly here to not talk about because like what I think all of us up here in our own ways have been through that world, and what we're seeing now is it's not applicable to who I think is in this crowd. And I think that our various different stories in early films that have excited, because we've all kind of exchanged stories at this point, are movies that were made through the power of, you know, harnessing your own community and your own backyard, you know, like movies that we saw here last night and all through the weekend. And I think that those tend to be the more interesting movies, the more career-launching festival kinds of movies, but they take such a wildly different route to getting made than the pre-sale, you know, market of it all. Yeah.
And I get that question a lot because people think that I have money, and I don't. But my job is to try to help you find money. But at the same time, you know, people ask me, like, where do I get this seed money to do this thing? Sometimes it's to go hire a writer because you have a great story. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, and sometimes I just say, ask them, do you have a rich uncle? You know, because that's how a lot of films get started, is they know somebody who's willing to put a little behind it. You know, I was at a panel a long time ago, some agents, one was from CAA, and they said, you know, I think there's a formula here, that it's 80% is raising equity, 80% about ROI, and 20% about heart. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know where that came from, but I think it could be 80% heart and 20% ROI, you know, because it's tough to guarantee an ROI on any independent film. But it takes somebody who believes in the project, maybe for a bigger reason than just the ROI.
Well, and, you know, like you just said, somebody says, I got an idea, I need to hire a writer. And so, like, I think all of us on this panel, people are constantly pitching us projects all the time. Say, I've got this great idea. And we're like, well, do you have a script? No. Well, all right, even if you're not a writer, you might as well write it yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. All right, now I need somebody to produce it for me. Well, why? Why would somebody else produce it for you? It's your idea, right? It's your film. Why is somebody else going to do it? Well, it's a great idea. Well, you and 10 million other people have great ideas. So I think so much of it is you have to be willing to do everything. I was like, I don't want to do everything. Well, then you don't want to make a movie if you don't want to do everything.
That's a hard truth. I say this and I see people get mad at me when I say it, but I'm like, there's a million good ideas out there, just like there's a million good actors out there. The ones who can actually get it done, that's the real difference.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's a million great scripts out there too.
Yeah,
right?
there are.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's all about what's attached to that. You know?
Who can
Yeah,
figure
I
out a way to get it done?
That's been one of there was this funny meme going around on like Instagram, film Instagram the other day. It was like in the 80s, writer pitches studio executive and gets $1 million sale in the room on a log line. And today, it's like, hey, I've got this cast, this much money already in place. We're set up to shoot here with this service company, and someone goes, come back to me when you're further along. And
Yeah.
and it's like, that is how it's been feeling. I only got started in this world like 2 years ago, and I feel like entered into the worst market of all time. Literally, like they're saying, it's the hardest time to be an independent filmmaker ever because ancillary revenue streams have dried up completely. You know, DVDs, sales, and like the streamer deals are looking different than they did.
For sure. Well, we were talking the other night about how the MG thing, not trying to hit the MG thing too hard, but like it used to just be a license, right? Like they'd license it to you for the premiere or the first couple years or something like that, and rights would revert back. Not the case anymore. They're all asking for worldwide and perpetuity forever across the whole universe, Like
For a tiny amount of money.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
I think
for $5.
You guys tell me if this aligns with your experiences, but I think when Netflix, and I use them as a stand-in for kind of all of the major tech-backed streamers or streamers, launched their career and their brand, they were coming to film festivals and shaking hands and then bidding obscene amounts of money on these really cool indie projects and creating flashy headlines and created this impression that everybody wanted their movie to be on Netflix, which everyone still does. But they were also doing kind of these cost-plus deals, which were like, okay, if you made your movie for $3 million, we'll buy it for $4 million. Say so you can pay your investors back with their premium, have a little bit to go around, and then that's a fair deal. And those deals, I think, have completely vanished. Like you said, no one goes, how much did your movie cost, and then sets the price. They just go, oh, do you want a $100,000 licensing fee to be on Netflix? And that producer inevitably says yes, because they'd rather have their movie on Netflix than not. And so it's like these streamers know that they can get all the content they could possibly need for a fraction of the price, and it's the investors in films like that are left holding the bag, pretty much.
That's the sobering, sobering or just depressing element of like the market that we're all in and that you're entering, right? Which is you look at movies out of the biggest film festivals, Sundance, South by, Tribeca, TIFF. Very few movies sell out of those festivals, right? They used to be real marketplaces, and so it's a reality of the current marketplace. I have optimism around how this changes and rebalances because ultimately film is such a special thing. It is so hard to create. It's easy to create. It's really hard to create something great, right? And when it does, it really does break out, and it breaks into culture in a way other mass media doesn't, right? And so it's kind of a like priceless thing when you look at it that way. When you look at like the history of this place, a little movie called Sex, Lies, and Videotape begins the indie film revolution here, right? So it can happen, right? It does happen. Every now and again you see it happen, which is the like magic of why we all kind of do this anyway, because sometimes you'd be like, well, why would anyone do this, right? But you see, Zach at a movie like Barbarian and now Weapons suddenly become this like phenomenal breakout hit. You see K-pop Demon Hunters, which Netflix, typically religious about not putting movies in theaters, is now releasing it in theaters, and it's like a sing-along interactive activity, and beat Weapons in the box office last week, right? So like the magic is there and the storytelling is there, and there's probably some of it sitting right here. So the challenge is like, how do you go into it a little eyes wide open, but also eyes wide shut? Otherwise you wouldn't ever pursue this career. It's not like a logical career to pursue, right? But I hate to talk about like be in a financing panel where you're like, the market is shit, good luck. All of these ways we got movies made don't exist anymore.
Well,
yeah, you're in the front.
So you all are talking about ROI, and simply put that there is very little avenues to getting that return on investment. Sanjay, you said earlier that you were part of like a game studio. Have you done anything with like combining film and games?
Yeah, I mean, so I love video games. I love the video game business, and I especially love like indie video games. The games business is the biggest category of viewing on all of YouTube, next to music, right? So I helped start this company years ago called Machinima, which is like the first YouTube company, right? And so we were building stories using video game engines as kind of like a poor man's Pixar, right? And then as we got bigger, we started making content inside of games like Halo and built like the world's largest Halo community. Yeah.
That's red versus blue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, we just looked at like the data of how big video games is as a cultural movement, how much viewing is happening on YouTube. Hollywood at that time, this is like 10 years ago, thought of video gaming as niche, right? And we were like, it's 3 times bigger than the movie business, and it's a massive category of viewing on all of YouTube around the world. It's by definition not niche, right? Like, it's like indie movies is cute compared to video games, right? And so that intersection now, Hollywood is paying a lot more attention to, because you've had The Last of Us, Fallout, Borderlands. Well, you know, one of them is not great. The rest of the other 2 were amazing. But like the attention to video game IPs, right? So it's a big category. There are a lot of cultural categories. Like I mentioned K-pop Demon Hunters. Hollywood for a while has thought of that as niche, right? If you know anyone under the age of 30 around the world, it's not niche, right? Bad Bunny is the biggest touring artist in the world, right? So how is reggaeton niche, right? That's why we like culture, and youth culture in particular, right? That could be hip hop, that could be street skating. These are proxies for audience at the end of the day, right? And so the traditional Hollywood system doesn't really know how to evaluate or put numbers around what that means, because the whole kind of history of valuation in the industry is really pegged off of kind of outdated data sets, right? Historical box office. This actor did this in historical box office, right? So that's why they look at things that are outside of that very insular, in our view, sort of systemically biased and calcified data set, and say, I don't know how to evaluate street skating. Right? Because there's like a Kevin Bacon movie called Gleaming the Cube. It's, you know, there's like not that many street skating movies, right? And so if you look through a backwards filled data set for your proxies for future, right, you're always gonna kind of be relying on the same things that worked in the past. You look at video gaming, street skating, hip hop. We have had this like movie with the recording artist Vince Staples. It was a big recording artist. And this was a few years ago. We pitched it to a bunch of Hollywood people. They were like, oh yeah, but hip hop is kind of niche, right? It's like, it's the biggest category of streaming on all of Spotify in every territory of the world. It's by definition not niche, right? And so the kind of the language around how we talk about it, that they understand is these are proxies for audience demand. These are communities that are vibrant, that are big, that spend money, and Hollywood is not really serving those communities, right? So I went on a tangent a little bit, but your question around games is, yes, games, right? So if you can make games, amazing. Start making an indie game. You could make an indie game that gets developed as an IP for film or television, right? That's why I'm still optimistic and kind of inspired by young filmmakers, because we meet a lot of young filmmakers who are like, oh, I built the website, I did this, I did that all myself, right? Our era, it was like, no one knows how to do that stuff.
That
right?
sounded super daunting.
Yeah.
When we were coming up, yeah.
Yeah, you can, I edited it, I did all the After Effects on my MacBook. Like, you've got a lot of tools available, and you've got a lot of different ways to incubate IP, whether that's like through audio, through a graphic novel, through a website you stand up and you start putting little snippets out. It's kind of like building the IP, because Hollywood doesn't really know how to assess that IP unless it's a New York Times bestseller, right?
Yeah, the market validation side of that stuff now is very interesting, where like I know a guy, just talking about optimistic stories on this, met a guy at South by this year, South by Southwest, where he's funding his films, really branded content deals, but nobody can really tell. But because they all take place outdoors, like there's a whole bunch of branded content in there, so he's profitable by the time the film comes out. And then he's also retaining the rights, because he has the ability, because he already made his money back, to go, I'm not going to take a bad licensing deal. And then he only does licensing deals that make sense to him. And then on top of that, he's self-distributing. So he set up the same thing you're saying, where he set up his own website. Where he's like, you go on here, you subscribe, and you get access to all of his films. Like, that's why I didn't say it. I can't remember.
It's a secret.
But I think the IP thing, makes makes perfect sense. You know, everybody has a screenplay, but screenplay, technically, yes, it's IP, but can you go on Amazon and buy, you know, I guess you could throw your screenplay up on Amazon, but I had a film that we were going to produce in 2020. I think we were talking about this. And because COVID, the whole thing falls apart, and I spent a year and a half trying to recast it. And then at one point, I was like, why don't I just turn this into a comic book? And so I turned it into a graphic novel that I just released at the end of the last year. It's like this 216-page graphic novel that's now an awesome proof of concept for the feature film, basically. I didn't draw it myself. I hired an artist and all that, and I had written the script, but I didn't know how to translate it into a comic book script, even though I'd been a collector for many years, and so learned how to do that, and then worked with an artist, and took us a year, and next thing you know, you've got a comic book, and be like, okay, here's something that exists.
Yeah, going back to just finding some form of market validation. You know, an IP is one of those things, at least you can point to it. I mean, I remember I had a producer friend tell me a story. She had a script in this financier's inbox for like months, and he just wasn't reading it. He wasn't reading it, and she kept following up. And then one day she got frustrated. She found a podcast that covered the same like true story, and just sent it to him and said, "Here's the story," and it's featured in this podcast. And he like bought the script the next week because he listened to the podcast and knew, okay, there's an audience for this.
That's a great example. You are seeing more people validate their ideas through podcasts now too. Like you're seeing people, they'll release, instead of making the pilot video version of it, they'll do the pilot audio version of it.
I have a friend who's a young filmmaker. She's written a TV pilot and series, and then she built a chatbot, an audio chatbot. So when she submits the material, there's a number you can call and just ask it any questions about the story. Tell me about the characters. Who is the audience for this? What happens in the end? Like, and it's just like, oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's great.
You had a question.
Yeah, well, and sorry, this guy in the back has had his hand up a while. You go ahead, sorry.
I'm interested in hearing what the Tommy's opinion about AI and how it's going to change how independent filmmakers make films. Do you think the cost will go down? And do you think there'll be a new challenge for distribution, maybe censorship?
That is a super complicated question. Thanks for asking it. But
Well,
everybody's going to probably have multiple opinions on this. Anybody want to start that?
As a non-expert, because I'm sure that you guys have some smarter takes than I do, but I think, look, will it replace certain jobs? Without question. That's happening across every sector, and everyone is going to have to brace for it. But I think in the context of this conversation, us like understanding and acknowledging that films are struggling to be profitable, reducing costs is in fact a pathway towards regaining a healthy independent film ecosystem. If they cost less, maybe we've got a fighting chance at rebuilding, right? So as much as there will be a painful shift with certain, elements of AI that are going to replace certain jobs, I think for the overall sector, it's not going away, and the producers that embrace it on the sooner side will find, opportunity to continue to make great art at a more economical price point.
Well, so I want to say that major studios are not immune to the market forces, and they're in the same boat as us when it comes to they're trying to lower cost. And that's why incentives are so darn important, because they rely on those now in order to make their projects profitable. And so there's a reason why everything is shooting overseas right now, and it's because the US dollar is really strong and other countries are offering incentives, as Tony can tell you all about. That's why we have Film USA. And so I think that AI becomes one more tool for them to lower cost before it's over with. And, it's not going to be that, we can exclude AI. It's because the unions don't want us using AI. No, AI is going to be a part of the filmmaking process.
Yeah, I'll just throw this out as a reference. I'm not going to do a big long rant on this, but I think there's ethics is going to be a major component in this in the future. Yeah, I mean, it currently is. But if you want to go on, I looked up the name this time, whoever was asking me about the name earlier, but look up Corey Williams on LinkedIn. He's the creator of a show called Silly Crocodile. And he has some really good thoughts on well thought out videos that he's made on this topic because he's dealing with major issues with piracy, essentially, in AI. Anybody else want to comment on
I know
AI?
you had a question. She's raised her hand a lot,
There we
too.
go. Yep.
For attaching an actor? No.
I think it's potentially like a prerequisite for a lot of projects. Where
It's
like,
better than nothing.
Yeah,
Who's the
Yeah.
actor?
yeah, but it doesn't necessarily make people go like, whoa, okay.
And that was a super fast answer for an actor, just because I've been
Yeah.
through that a lot, where this, you know, using the example of anything within MG, who's in it? That's all they want to know is who's in it, and, you know, it's worth X amount of dollars if so-and-so's in it. And from the agency's perspective, they're not going to attach a client. You know, their first question is, well, are you fully funded? No. All right. Are you willing to do pay-for-play? Which means that you put money in escrow, that whether the film gets not made or not, the actor gets to keep the money. Nicolas Cage has made a lot of money on films like that.
In a lot of cases, they don't get off the ground, and they just got their check.
Yeah, they just get paid for not working, basically. You actually deliver the film, they have to pay. Yeah, because you have a contract saying they're paying based off of your delivery of the film. If you never get it made and you can't deliver, then, you know, that's another story. But if you can deliver it, yeah, and you know, they want to know through that process. And the first part of your question was, I'm sorry, what was it again? Oh, where do you see the industry going? I mean, it's so hard to say, right? Because, you know, you go from no VHS to VHS to DVD to, you know, and there's theatrical and there's streaming and all that. So it's hard to say like where the future lies. But the one thing I do know is that you have to make things at the right price. Like right now, it's like you've just got to make it as cheap as humanly possible to be able to do anything with it. I meet a lot of filmmakers and they pitch their story or say whatever their movie is and say, oh, what's your budget? Say $2 million. Like, why is it $2 million? Well, because that's the number they have in
As
their
I
head
like
that
to
it
say,
thinks to
you're-
make it.
you're-
It's like, well, how much money do you have? I have $50,000. Your budget's $50,000.
Yes.
Because the money that you have is what your budget is, basically. And it's really make it as cheap as possible and then try and make your money back for your investor or yourself or your, and we haven't really talked about, I suppose we could get into, you know, crowdfunding and grants and incentives, and there's a lot of other ways besides just somebody writing you a check, which is hard to do to be able to make your film. And you have to maximize all of those avenues to be able to really finance your project.
One thing about the LOI question, for people who don't know, it's a letter of intent. There's another answer to that, which is like in our business, and this kind of ties to the AI question in a bizarre way, it is still a very, very relationship and gut-driven business. In some ways that are good, right? There's a lot of like humanity in the whole process, right? And so who you work with, who your producing partners are, what their track record is, what their reputation is, really matters, right? So we have great trading relationships with the big agencies. If I say someone's attached, I've never once been asked, can you send me an LOI? Because I don't say that unless I mean it, and they can call that person's agent and say, hey, this guy sent me this project, says your actress is attached. They say yes, right? So we are super like serious about our word, right? Our word has to matter. And that's, so like we've never once been asked like, can you send me an LOI, right? So it kind of doesn't matter, to Tony's point. What matters more is like, do you really have that person attached, right?
Which we
If I
see
call your
a
bluff,
lot of
right?
non-real attachments.
Right,
you
and
know, all
and
the time.
that's why that's why it doesn't matter, because everyone's like, right? Now, the other element of this that is good is you can build these relationships, going to these festivals, meeting actors, writers, talking to them, and taking the time to actually build that network and relationship means when someone calls to say, this woman just called me and says you're attached, they say, oh yeah, that's my girl. Oh, that matters more than an agent sending an LOI, right?
Well, and then they hype it up in that situation too. 'Cause they're like, yes, I do really want to make that one.
That's right. right? And so it is really important. It's like a irreplaceable kind of thing, right? Because there are those, oh yeah, there's a deal, it's pay or play. Nick Cage doesn't really care about the movie, right? So
He's hoping you don't make the movie.
yeah, he's right, and so it can cut both ways. Obviously, I'm a giant Nick Cage fan, so if I could get him attached to something, I would. But so I don't know if that answers your question in a different way. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
that's
those
what-
those things
I-
can be indicators of different things to different people. So like sometimes an LOI is like a negative indicator to some people. But then like I've been recommending this to people is like, hey, if you have this person and they're truly excited about your project, get them on camera saying that. Like just get them in the same room, and rather than just putting like Nick Cage said my movie's going to be great and he wants to do it, like get them on video saying that, and that can help a lot because it shows a lot more trust versus like a long sheet of paper that just has a signature at the bottom. But there's
Yeah,
a bunch of different
we
ways.
did that with,
if you start small and just get movies made, that's how you build that track record.
Well, that's the
Right.
biggest. That's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
If you've never made a feature film, just make one first. You don't have to have $100,000, $50,000. I made my first feature for $6,000. I'm not going to show anybody that film, even though people have been asking, and I dare anyone in the room to find it. No one will ever find it. I keep daring that at film festival. Someone's going to find it eventually. But just make it, because as soon as you make that first film, somebody will say, "Oh, you made a feature film." They don't even need to see it. They're going to be like, "Will you help me make mine?" And because that's what happened to me. I made my first feature, and then people just started saying, "You made a feature, help me make mine." Next thing you know, it's 1, 2, 3.
Us too.
First one's the hardest, and you see a whole lot of people make just one movie. Steven, you're
Going back to like the future of, because I think it's sort of assuming that everyone's down for the low cost movie here, then it's like that what next question I think starts to become, not waiting for one of the big fancy distributors to give you a big deal, right? And so give you a big money deal, because even when we watch these A24 movies and these neon movies and we see emerging voices and creators that we don't recognize, and so we know that on some level there are companies that are doing this, but I still think they're incubating that talent through their agency relationships for years before we see it, right? So when it comes to us, like the movie that, I don't know if anyone here got a chance to see this movie I produced called Crossword, but it's a movie that we've been going through the sales cycle for the last year at film festivals and slowly realizing, okay, no one's really gonna, I don't know if I should say this, but let me just skip over that. And but what we've been realizing,
And your arm's getting tired. We'll get to you.
let me reframe it. There's power in our own community with the people behind that film. And so what we've decided instead is that we're going to be doing eventized screenings all across the country in places that we have community, that we know we can get people to show up, much like the senior prank screening here, and things like that. And then also sell some merch, sell an exclusive experience with the actors or the writer or director that people can get behind. Like, people still are hungry, I think, to participate in communal experiences. And we're losing some of that with the streaming of it all. Independent filmmakers, I think, can replace in their communities with films like, the first time low-cost films that we're talking about.
I think
And
that's
the
why social
studios and
media-
streamers are so risk averse right now, it may actually work in our favor that they're not willing to greenlight original content if they don't have, something to base it upon. So, sequels and reboots are kind of their game these days. So it is kind of up to us to come up with original ideas. And when they love our original ideas, then they want to throw money at it and ask us to do a sequel for it.
There you go. Question.
Yeah, Sanjay, you were talking about agencies earlier. I was wondering if you had any experience with financing
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure all these guys do as well. So you mean like with the agency sales teams or their independent financing teams, or? Yeah, so for everyone's benefit, the major agencies, certainly WME, CAA, UTA, have independent sales departments. They're called independent sales. They are also financing groups, and they're dialed into the roster of the 30, 40 biggest independent film investors and companies in the world. They have very proprietary relationships. Some of them overlap. Some of them are public-facing companies, so anyone could Google them and find out. Some of them are, very wealthy people who are like, hey, I want to start investing in movies, right? They can be very helpful if you have that right kind of movie. And what that means could be a super prestigious, buzzy script that has maybe, won the Academy Nickel Award. Something that is getting buzz in the town, right? Or just a script that is going around and people are responding to. It could mean one of their important actors or directors is attached to already. Then they are incentivized to get financing for your movie, right? It's rare that we'll just send them a script and say, hey, can you help me go raise financing for it? Yeah, we're a tiny client, so unless I say, oh, I have your client, George Clooney, attached to star in this movie, then they'll pay attention, right? So they can be very helpful for very, very specific kinds of projects. For like a first-time indie filmmaker, it's still a tough, because you're kind of at like the top of the mountain there, right? It's tough to just get we call a naked script, like a script that's good but has no real accolades around it, no attachments around it, no big actors or director around it, because they just see so many, like we've been saying, there's just thousands of scripts, right? And thousands of pretty good scripts, right? And so for the big agencies, and there are smaller agencies that have their own financing and packaging departments, for the big agencies, you really need to do a lot of the work before you bring anything in. And that's the same with financing. It's a pretty, as Patrick was saying, it's a risk-off industry. It's a very risk-averse industry. It's kind of a lazy industry, right? And so a lot of people, I'm constantly surprised at how many people don't actually read screenplays or watch a ton of movies, right? And so when you just send a document, it's very rare that someone's going to read that document. Right?
It's hard to get an agency or an actor to read a script.
Very
it's
hard.
really hard.
So the materials this is a marketing exercise, right? And so the best screenplay in the world, what you really need is, and this is where good experienced producers can help, what's the visual presentation that goes with it, right? And that's a pitch deck. Is it a website you stood up? Is it an interactive deck that you could make a short AI video, right? Like that's where I think this stuff can be really compelling visually. And have you packaged the movie? This person is attached to direct. She won Sundance 2 years ago. Her next movie did this. How do you really get someone to say, oh shit, I should pay attention to this project, right? Whether you're repped at the agency or not, obviously they prioritize people who they represent, but the indie sales arms of of the big agencies don't necessarily only work with people they represent. I don't know if that answers your question or not. And Steven, you may have.
Well, no, I think it's like, I mean, when I'm talking to filmmakers, I'm always thinking, just like you said, as a marketing exercise, and I think like, what is your sales story? Because your movie is so little about what the movie's about, and pitching the here's what happens, that this guy meets this girl and da-da-da. Producers just like goes one in ear and out the other, I think. But if you like, so I'm always urging filmmakers to figure out how can you situate this project and yourself as like justify its existence to me, and because that's what money people are going to want to see. And I think that like more often when you go through that exercise, you start to realize that it's about, it needs to exist because we want to shoot in a certain area, or because we want to we want to see characters on screen that we haven't seen together before, right? Or just like there's always another angle, and if there's not, that's also food for thought. Like if you can't answer that question for your own project,
Maybe the world's telling you something.
Yeah,
In that
exactly.
situation.
Well, and there's so many different models now. You take a look at like what Angel Studios or what the Chosen TV series has done. Anybody familiar with Chosen TV series, Angel Studios and stuff? Like a lot of what, and I know the producers for the Chosen from my time in Dallas, because it shoots about 30 miles outside of Dallas or whatever, and so they were associated with Angel Studios for season 1, and since then they've kind of done it on their own, and they basically now have set up a nonprofit organization, so all these people from around the world donate money to the nonprofit. They get a tax write-off, and they use that to produce the series. And they did little things like, I can't remember which season it was, season 4 or something like that. It was like the feeding of the 5,000. So like, hey, do you want to be one of 5,000 extras in the feeding of the 5,000 scene in this season of The Chosen? Pay us X amount of dollars, and you get to be in the movie. They had 12,000 people pay to do it. They sold out every hotel in a 25-mile radius, and had more than 5,000 extras that they were able to rotate on, multiple days for shooting this, and they paid them to be in the show because they built this thing and they have this great following, and people want to support that, and it's a story that they want to see about Jesus and everything else. And so finding those other ways of getting financing for your film, whatever it might be, the hot buttons for the different people that you're approaching. It's not just write a check and you're getting an investment, because people don't invest. If you're going to invest in something, you're not going to invest in film, because it's a horrible investment. That's not how you make money, is investing in film. You make money in other ways, and then you lose it investing in film.
Well, but people also invest in people, right? And rather than projects. So if they want to see that filmmaker succeed, which it kind of reminds me like this movie that we did up in Oregon called Breakup Season. And it was this tiny movie, first-time filmmaker. He had amassed a little bit of funding from this more or less family and friends funding, right? And we wanted to go make it in this tiny little town of like 10,000 people. And I thought it's 4 hours from the nearest city. So I thought this is wildly impractical, and it's going to cost us more money than we have to do this thing. And so we went out there to just test the waters and start talking to people and see how the community would receive us, And I remember the first couple doors we knocked on, we were saying like, oh, we're making a Christmas movie, and a guy falls in love with the girl, and da-da-da, and it's like, door shuts, And so we started reframing how we talked about what the movie would be. And we started talking about it in terms of our economic impact in the community, the partnership we were forging with the local college to hire their students onto our set, the number of hotel rooms that we would start to, fill if this came to fruition, the rental cars and the catered meals and all the different things that would be associated with our production coming here. And that language became kind of our sales story, was like it had, in the end, nothing to do about the creative elements of the film and everything to do about, we want to make our movie in this small town, but we need a little bit more help. Can you help us? And people started responding to that. And we started to get, investors and donors coming in and people, saying, I'll give you this much money, but I want my daughter to be in a scene or something like that, right? And I remember when we all was said and done, we asked one of the guys who really helped us, well, it was two people. One was the local film festival themselves, which is called the Eastern Oregon Film Festival. And then the other
Shout
was
out.
the head of so certainly we're going to figure that one out here at some point. But the other was the head of the Economic Development Office. And we said, why are you helping us so much with this tiny little project that we're doing? And he said, when I was a kid, I was an extra in the movie Stand By Me. And I saw how over the years so many people came to the region and came and stood on that bridge where that train scene takes place because of the impact of that film. And if I can bring that to my little town, that's what I want to do, And so it's totally the power of regional filmmaking. That movie would have not been possible had we not had the support of LeGrand, Oregon. And now it's become a big part of their story, and we're on the Oregon Film Trail, and as I talk about with Nathan and Brendan, we got to figure out how to do it in Baton Rouge.
I saw some other hands pop up. Any other questions? There we go. Yeah.
What's the film that just played here the other night, right?
Yeah, so there's films like Senior Prank. I'm just going off of memory here, so I'm going to miss some of the names. But, like, wasn't the director of 10 Cloverfield Lane, didn't he get started on YouTube, too? And then, like, yes.
The
Yeah.
Talk to Me guys were YouTubers.
Yeah, Talk to Me guys were YouTubers. We were the Canane brothers on...
Freddie Wong.
Yeah, Freddie Wong. Like, there's a ton of folks now that are... they got their start on YouTube or Instagram. And I think that matters a lot. I mean, you also... That video came out of... I can't remember who it was. Was it Sosie Bacon that was saying, like, it sucks that people are asking me about how many followers I have when I get into meetings? Where, like, that's a question now in a lot of these meetings where they're like, how many followers does your team have? Like, what's your traction like on social media platforms? It's a bit of a blessing and a curse where, like, I think you see some films, that's how they're getting their financing. And you see that industry booming right now. Like, you see the creator economy on an upswing, and then you see film and TV in a little bit of a valley. But it's on a collision course. Like, they are intertwined.
There's a TikTok creator, I forget the name, Egghead and Twinkie is a film, a really good film, an indie film from a couple years ago that they built their phone. Sarah Holland, yeah, I interviewed her on the Dallas Film Podcast. They, kind of made their funding on TikTok basically to be able to make their film. There's a lot of ways.
Amazing opportunity
Yeah.
right now. That did not exist not that long ago, and it's a huge opportunity right now.
Any TikTok stars in the room?
Well, I mean,
They should get up here and talk.
It's there's a certain I think people associate like the YouTuber or kind of influencer or creator economy with like a certain class of creator, which is the like, hey guys, camera on me. It's like a host, right? And that's a category. If you're successful at that, you're obviously really good at doing that. Some of those transition into like, call it film. Not all of them can act. Not all of them want to act. Most of them don't, right? Because they're already doing well at their thing, right? We look at these platforms ultimately as like democratizing access platforms to incubate IP, and especially if you're an aspiring filmmaker outside of the system, it's the best thing in the world that you have access to it, right? So I track AI filmmakers. I watch a ton of videos. I track people.
Have you watched the Stormtrooper vlogs?
Yes.
Those are great.
So you can find I think A24 is doing the kind of official version of the Backrooms, these like viral videos that this guy made on YouTube. So these are, that was discovered on YouTube. We knew of it for like a year, and people who are in that world are like, oh yeah, that's like old from Reddit threads, right?
It's funny how some of that stuff is all of a sudden a new idea when it's been on the internet for a decade.
Yeah, and so it's like a discovery platform. To our conversation earlier around like, can you use podcasts, can you use YouTube videos to incubate the IP, right? It doesn't mean you need to make the whole movie, but can you, like Backrooms was like a series of very short vignettes almost, right? That just kind of took off, right? And that filmmaker it's a real filmmaker. So I wouldn't like call him a YouTuber, right? It's a filmmaker using YouTube as a distribution platform to show off its chops, right? And so if you can build story universes in that contained an environment, that's someone I will always bet on, right?
Yeah, and I think that stigma, like you're talking a little bit about a stigma with like the YouTuber bit. Like I think that is fading, where this shot in Baton Rouge and around the area, but the Parallax Theory was a series that shot in 2013, 2014. It was Ron Howard's money that made that series. He invested in a whole bunch of YouTubers, and at the time, like there definitely was a stigma around that. But Sawyer Hartman directed that, and he was definitely one of those in front of the camera kind of guys. But when he was making that series, he was behind the camera. And there was definitely a bit of a difficult translation between like what works on YouTube and then like what works for like a film or a series. But like it was the same thing with games for a while too, where like now it is, those things have blended and intertwined a whole lot more. And that was how that series got funded. It was a YouTube channel got Ron Howard's attention, and then Ron Howard was like, hey, let's turn that into.
Well, and the thing about YouTube now, I think most people may not realize, more people actually watch YouTube on their television than on their phone now. It's the majority of YouTube viewership is on actual TVs and not on mobile anymore. And a big part of distribution is the number one streaming platform in the world. Not Netflix, not anybody else, but YouTube is. And we're talking about feature films. So you can find horror, action, sci-fi, Western channels on YouTube that'll have, whatever, 1 million subscribers or something like that, and they've got 200 films on that channel. You watch them for free, you watch commercials. Well, people are making money off of that. They're being monetized from the advertising, just like old school television and Tubi and these other things. They're making money off of the advertising on that. So if you made your brand new independent feature film and you just said, I'm going to give it to one of these channels to put on YouTube, that's actually a smart play.
Yeah.
Now, that could be a smart play because you're just going to collect advertising revenue from that channel. No, not your own channel, but you put it on somebody who's already monetized, you get that split. And the same thing with, we haven't talked about, like a film hub, who's an aggregator who'll put your film on 300 different channels for you, and you collect the revenue, and you can look inside their, I've not used it, but then you look inside their platform, and you can track on a daily basis how much money you're making from all these different platforms, and you don't have to go the traditional route.
Yeah, I'm seeing this happen a lot with comedy right now, where like you're seeing a lot of these comics, rather than like putting out their special on Netflix or something like that, they'll license it to something like 800 Pound Gorilla. Is that the name of the channel? Yeah, where it's serving as like a YouTube distributor, like a social content distributor. It's not exclusively YouTube, but that's an interesting model, and like you do see film kind of being a little late to the game on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what the larger conversation that I always think of with the creator economy is that we've all, film people have thought, oh, how do we bring them to our side of things? And it's like now, it's like they're passing us by. I mean, the eyeballs are on user-generated, short-form, vertical content much more than they are on feature-length films as a format. That's why sales are slumping and are having all these issues with distribution. So it's like, how does film adapt to that rather than the other way around is, I think, the existential question,
Take your feature, break it into 1 minute chunks,
kind of,
and then make them pay for every minute, just like they're doing with all the vertical, real short.
And I think film thinks about that a lot and goes like, oh, it's just that simple. I'll just recrop it. And it's like, no, it's not that. Like, you have to design for the platform it's being distributed on. I think people underestimate the amount of work that goes into that frequently. Where like you have to, what does it look like on Square? And it's not necessarily like just what does it look on like a 1:1 aspect ratio. It's like how is it going to live on this platform? If that's Instagram, YouTube, like there's going to be LinkedIn TV shows before too long. Like I feel like they're heading that way,
But they'll want a job is what they're going to want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Office might air on LinkedIn first if it were to come out, now. But other questions? Willie.
When you are pitching or hearing a pitch, what are some of the buzzwords or elements that really kind of pique your interest
Or lean away. No one's ever thought of this before.
I'm thinking about what I want to actually say.
I've got one.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm hearing a pitch or beyond hearing a pitch and really talking to a filmmaker genuinely about, like, how do we figure this out, what I'm always looking for is how self-motivated they are. And like if they're framing, like we talked about, a naked script, it comes across a producer's desk like a homework assignment, But if it's, well, I have this, and then I have this other thing, it doesn't have to be big Hollywood stuff. It could be, I've got my buddy's camera and this old abandoned warehouse down the road, right? It just needs to fit for that project. But if you can see in the person that they're extremely self-motivated and that they are going to figure it out one way or another, that's what excites me to get involved in things. And so, again, not about buzzwords, it's about those other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're saying is like they want you to hop on their train, not them hop on your train. My train's full.
Exactly. Like I think when the first few movies that I did as a producer, there's no rhyme or reason to what genre or what style or what. It's just like, oh, a filmmaker that if we team up, we can get this done. that's exciting, you know.
I like, it sounds cheesy, but just like passion about sometimes you can tell someone's not that into it, and it's like, doesn't make any sense. Pitching is performance, and it's a craft and a skill in its own right. It's worth practicing that craft, and it's acting really, right? And so it's a marketing exercise. If you have any experience with acting, it's like repetitions, right? It's unfortunate because some of the best writers aren't great at pitching, and some people are amazing at pitching, and I've heard some pitches where I'm like, fuck, this is amazing, and then you get the script, and the script is not that good, right? It's like, oh, she's good at pitching, right? It's like, it's its own craft, and so I would practice, it sounds cheesy, but just practice pitching, know how to pitch the movie, know how to speak with conviction about the movie, understand the business of the movie, aside from just the creative of the movie. Why is there a market for this kind of a movie? What are the references that you use? We have people pitch, and they reference movies that often are great movies, but that all lost money. And that's kind of like, ooh, man, you want to do them a favor and say, just pick 3 movies that were successful, right?
I have 3 that I'm kind of looking for. One is Louisiana. Right. The other 2 are Baton Rouge, right? It's going to be easier, especially with the incentive that we have. If it's set here, if the director's from here, if the writer's from here, all of those elements, I think, could go into whether you're going to be able to qualify for the 40% tax credit going forward. But if at the very least I know that you're going to try to get this thing produced here, well, then that means there's hope that we can get you at least a 40% tax credit. Does that make sense?
Just going to use a little recommendation on this. Know your audience before you go into the pitch, because different people are going to say different things on that every time, as far as like the buzzwords, and like something that makes one person lean in might make somebody else go, yeah.
Well, and I think part of it too is, what is the pitch? Is it an actual pitch, or is it you're just meeting someone who might be good to work with down the road? So when I travel, when I come to this festival, or I'm going to Cannes, or I'm going to other festivals, people will say, well, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish out of it? And I'm like, nothing. I'm not trying to accomplish anything at all. I just want to meet people, hang out. Sometimes I don't even want to talk about film. I want to talk about other stuff. I don't want to talk business. And if you get along with somebody, if you like somebody, and there's like some kind of connection there, you could be friends with someone, be like, that'd be cool to work together somewhere down the road, knowing whatever they do and you do, and somehow it comes together. But so often, especially and I know I reference Cannes all the time, especially in that market, people just come up to you and you're like, here's my project, here's my pitch, can you give me money? And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah, I got a funny one like that. I was at Cannes in 2012 or 2013 or something like that. I had me and this other guy both got PB&Js for lunch while we were at the American Pavilion, and we ended up sitting next to each other and eating with each other. Did not talk any business. But it was one of the producers on It Follows, and it like just talked about like his movie a little bit, and then didn't talk to him again for 10 years. But it was a super easy way to bring it back up. It was like, hey, we're both the guys who had the PB&Js for lunch.
I was 2013. I was standing in line getting a falafel at 5 in Cannes after being out drinking all night. And the guy I'm standing next to in line, because we're both starving, because we were both out drinking all night, he was the executive producer on the King's Speech that just won the Oscar for Best Picture. And he gave me his business card.
Yeah.
Because we were getting a falafel after being drunk.
Yeah.
And nothing came of it, of course, but just having a great conversation, and turns out, and just, you never know.
You never know when it's going to come back around.
The New Orleans guys I mentioned earlier that financed Bernie the Dolphin and Bernie the Dolphin 2 was sitting at dinner. They were sitting there. I had a big liter of beer, and they heard me talking, and they're like, American. And I was like, yes. And, oh, where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, we just did this film with Patrick Wilson. I know Patrick Wilson. He's from St. Pete. Oh, the film's in. So next thing you know, fast forward a couple years later, they're investing in 2 films.
Yeah. Saw a hand pop up for a second. There we go.
So, kind of non-joke, but kind of also stalking the person you're going to pitch your movie to, like checking their letterbox, checking their,
Yes.
like figuring out what they
You got to focus a whole lot on your delivery on that one, because I am definitely that kind of guy where I'll like come up with some weird obscure thing that they don't think anybody knows about, and I'll find a way to mention it, because I I think it comes down to like what you're actually interested in. Like if you actually care about it, that comes across. Like Sanjay was saying, like you have to be a big fan, you have to be hyped up about it, and that's what gets other people excited. But then you also got to make sure not to do it in a creepy way.
If you show up on Clearwater Beach on a Saturday when I happen to be playing volleyball, beach volleyball, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, but you might have a restraining order afterwards.
Well, I think it's like what effectively what you guys are saying is like, and always been one of my mantras is I just want to make movies with my friends, right? So I think it's much more about like in LA, I co-host a bi-monthly filmmaker meetup, and we just hang out and drink beer at a bar and talk. You know, sometimes we talk shop, sometimes we don't. There's no agenda, no structure, but it's gathering with like-minded people. Over time, that leads to work. Movies beget movies. You make one, more people call, like everything we're saying. But so in my experience, doesn't start with a really strong pitch. It starts with a basis for a relationship, you know, and like-minded people, and then you get going down the same road together at some point, you know. But rarely has someone swoops in, you know, meets you the next day. They write a check for your thing because it was a great pitch. So it's all the other things that lead to that moment.
It's true, because you and I both met Steven at South by. We're drinking beer, right?
Hanging out, drinking beer, talking shop, and look at us now.
Look at us now.
I've made more connections at film festivals, just not even at the event itself, but just like having a drink later
Hotel
somewhere
lobby.
afterwards, hotel lobby,
Waiting
sitting
in
around,
line.
waiting
I've
in
met so many
line.
people just waiting in line.
And being a good hang, seriously, that I say this a lot, and it's just like if you're just a good hang, opportunities will come.
There's some people where that's their whole career.
Like
Being a
that's
good
why-
hang. Sanjay, you were going to say something? Sorry.
Oh, no, did I?
Okay.
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Questions? We got any more before we're done at 5:30, right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
we're 5 minutes.
One thing for pitching, it is just as important in your like pitch materials, is I always ask who is asking for this movie. Like who's the audience for this movie, right? And a lot of filmmakers don't have really an answer, because the film is a personal, it's like, oh, I've been working on this for 7 years, it's based on this story that I love, or it's a true story that my grandmother was involved in this thing. And sometimes they're very compelling stories, right? But if you don't stop to ask, who wants to see this movie? Like, who is anyone asking for this? One of our first questions when we read a script is anyone asking for this?
That's a fantastic question. And
So if that's, you know, again, it's just a different way. It's such a personal business, right? It's a creative industry, right? And so these are emotional decisions to make, put so much of your life and resources into a creative project. Our side of it is it's art in commerce, right? You could be a visual artist, you could be a painter, you could be a sculptor. You know, there's a number of ways to channel creative energy, right? If this is the medium you're going to pick, it is a mass medium. What's so powerful about it is it can reach a lot of people, right? In a way a painting can't, right? That's why we love storytelling. That's why we love popular culture and storytelling, right? So that's not always the answer every investor. There are philanthropic investors, and a very personal story about a very specific subject matter may be exactly what they're looking for, right? But this is the know your audience, right? Is know who you're pitching to and what they're looking for. You can do that without being creepy and stalking them. You can read up about them and just say, oh, okay, he likes movies like this, this, and this. These are the kinds of movies they've made. These are the kind of movies they're looking for. And you can kind of self-select out of, like, oh, this is probably not a good fit for those guys, right?
that's really important to know too, is like when to opt out on that stuff. But like what you're saying is it might be a deeply personal story, but that there might be, you know, a million other people. Like you're talking about the niche thing, and it's like all these studios saying like, well, isn't that a niche thing? And it's not actually, you know, it's by definition not, like you're saying. But just a little homework on that if anybody's interested in that theory. There's a great essay by Kevin Kelly called 1,000 True Fans. You can go read that, and it'll explain that whole concept to you.
Also, in terms of pitch advice, I'll throw in a quick pet peeve of mine on comps. 'Cause I think when people think of comps, and you need them in your pitch deck, I'm not against it, but when people think of comps, in my opinion, they think of the subject matter And so there's a lot of like, oh, well, it's a love story of in high school, so it's going to be like Lady Bird. And it's like, well, and then all that I hear this from first-time filmmakers a lot, and they're like, oh, well, Lady Bird was a first-time filmmaker, and look how well it did. And it's like, well, first-time filmmaker with an asterisk, you know, who was able to get that cast and get that crew and raise that money. That's not, you know, so much what often the level of filmmakers that, you know, I'm certainly talking to. So I think of comps in terms of scope too, and not just creative. Like, what is the $100,000 backyard movie that did pretty well? You know, like, to me, include both. Just little.
For years, people always used to have in their horror films Paranormal Activity and The Blair Witch Project. Like the two biggest outliers in the history of film is like your film's not likely going to be an outlier like that.
And pitch decks with these little books that have Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and people that you're not going to get them in your movie. Why even?
For a while, I think I saw Matthew McConaughey in like every pitch deck.
He might be.
It's like he doesn't even make sense for that role.
He could win an award for in the most pitch decks. You're right about that.
One more question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about, like, do you guys think the impact of this, like the concept is still?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, make them. Yeah, if that's the question.
Yeah, I'm a fan, especially if they are made. It depends on what you're making it for, right? So sometimes you should just make a short film to show you know how to make a short film, right? Like, I know the fundamental elements of filmmaking and storytelling, right? Especially if you haven't made a feature, make a short, direct a commercial, like make a music video, just repetitions, right? If it's a proof of concept for a feature, I think that's the best reason to make a short film, right? Sometimes people make a short, you're like, oh, that was cool. What do you plan to do with it? And they're like, nothing. It's like, okay. I mean, it can be a calling card, especially if it's good. It shows your chops. It could get into festivals. It gives you a little bit of like third-party validation, right? That this is just a filmmaker to watch. But if you can thread that needle and actually say, I have this feature script, this is a short that's a scene from it, a proof of concept for it, sets up the story, the universe, right? The Backrooms was essentially that. Those are a series of short films setting up a feature film, right? I'm a big fan of that. We have a project that will be at TIFF this year that's a TV series. This was already announced last week, so I can talk about it. We were developing this TV series for like 2 years. Television market is even harder than the indie film market, if you can believe that. And we pivoted with the film team to say, let's take the last scene of the pilot and let's turn it into a short film. We won't tell anyone it's a TV show, and we'll see if we can make a film that stands on its own as a short and submit it to festivals. It got into TIFF, it'll premiere at TIFF. So now the creator, who's a first-time creator, has these bona fides of my short film got into, you know, one of the world's important film festivals, and we already have the TV pilot, the Bible, the pitch deck, all the materials for a TV show ready to go, right?
And I just made a short proof of concept based off my graphic novel, which is based off the feature. So made that proof of concept, and I have a lot of connections in the industry to use that, to take that next step to get back to the feature that we were going to do in 2020.
It's all like de-risking the film, right? It shows, oh, there's like, it's fleshing it out and building the world and showing third-party interest in that, right?
I would even add one step beyond that. So yes to all that, and then what's something I've seen work. We did this with Dog Years, our movie with Leah Lewis and Xolo Maridueña. We had them get on camera on a Zoom screen and talk about why the movie was important to them, why it needed to be made, why they'd never, seen anything like it, and so on and so forth. And that video traveled from investor to investor to investor, and I think it was a huge sales tool. So now any movie that's taking an independent finance path like that, I'm starting to recommend a fundraising video that showcases your story, and hopefully some of your filmmaking skills can be worked into that video, just depending, but I think that's starting to be an important sales tool with so many conversations happening over email.
One asterisk on the short film is we have been sent some amazing short films, and the film team is like, hey, how do we make our money back on this? We spent $180,000 on that short film. And that's like, you're not getting that back, right? So, I've seen people kind of overdo the short film.
Yeah, that's a feature.
Yeah, that you should have just made a movie for $180,000, right?
Yeah, and-
There isn't really like a monetization path for a short. There's no market for short films. There are a few people that license them. They're not going to pay you a lot of money for them, and so I wouldn't see it as like, oh, I made this short, now I'm going to go make my money back on it. Right?
That's kind of interesting. So somebody made a short for the Louisiana Film Prize, which you guys actually took and said, you know what, we like this, and now they're trying to make the feature version of it. You sent it back to me. Take a look at this. This is one that I think would be great for Louisiana because it's set in Louisiana. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to that.
It's a whole pipeline.
Short films are business cards, is what they are.
Cool. Well, thanks. And shout out to John Mudge for asking that question, director of Hardhead. It played this morning.